Three, two, and one. Howdy, everyone. Welcome to Red Thoughts with Perry Picasso. I'm your host, Perry Picasso, and today I am joined by a very lovely guest.
Hi, I am Stephanie Godoy.
Woo! And today is
December 14th, and the time is 10:48 for those who care.
lovely.
Oh, 2024.
Perfect for the archive.
Right?
Alrighty, so Stephanie is an amazingly talented painter, an artist, a dear friend of mine. I've known her for quite a while. I should also, I'm going to start off by saying on the podcast by pronouns he, she, they.
She, her.
Slay, okay. So yeah, she does a lot of incredible work, and right now she is also currently showing at the Cheech Museum for the Desde Los Cielos show, which is currently up on exhibition until March 16th of 2025. Go check it out. And your piece in there is titled
On the Revolution of Heavenly Spheres, which I borrowed from Copernicus. And Nicholas Copernicus was the person who was like, hey, everything does not revolve around the earth. It actually revolves around the sun. And he was kind of scared to let that information out because it would upset the authorities.
Right.
So he released it on his deathbed.
Oh, I did not know that. Oh, you got the tea.
Yes. So that's why I decided to name my painting after his little essay about that.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm intrigued even more to find out more. Okay. So before we dive deep into that, thank you for that little sneak peek. I would love to get to know more about you as an artist, you as a person. Sort of like, how did art come into you? Because I know for a lot of artists, it's like we've always been doing art for sure. But I'm curious, like, how has your journey been? Have you always sort of been into the arts? Were you like, no, I'm dead set on being an artist? Or were you just like, no, I'm going to do XYZ, and then you pivoted, you know? How was that like?
Okay, so I'll begin with saying that at the age of 4, I did my first watercolor, and it was of Elmo.
Aww.
Yeah, and so I saw like the pigment of like red, and I was just like so mesmerized, and I was like, this is it. And so I remember I made a bunch of watercolors when I was like 4, and I set out like a little table outside to sell them.
Oh, like a little, like the lemonade stands.
Yes.
That's so cute.
And I only sold one painting to my mom's friend, and I was like, I hope she didn't buy it out of like sympathy. I was like, I hope
No.
she likes it.
She probably loved it. If I were to see like somebody doing that, I'd be like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
Right. And then after that, like in middle school, I had to pick an elective, and so I was like, should I do music? Should I do art? And I just knew I had to do art. And I was at Sunnymead Middle School. Shout out to Lisa Kaler. That was my teacher.
Shout out Lisa.
And I did murals there and just all
In
the
middle
way.
school?
Yeah.
Oh wow, so you've been doing it for a while.
Yeah, totally. And
Wow.
and then after that, I did like art in high school. However, I stopped because of a teacher. So
We all have that one.
I have many of those teachers, but this one teacher, I was 17. His name was Donovan at Moreno Valley City College, and he worked for Disney. Anyways, he told me I couldn't draw a cube, and I believed him because his opinion was just so heavy on me because he worked
Right.
at Disney. And
There's an authority.
yeah, and I loved Disney growing up. And so I stopped painting. I stopped doing art at 17. Yeah, because of that teacher. And I decided, and I was in middle college, which is a program where you start college early. And so
Oh.
I had to decide what my major was going to be. And so art was out of the table. And then I took a philosophy class, and I was like, you know what? I'll major in philosophy instead of
Okay.
art, because I just didn't think I would be successful with art. I was like, maybe I'll do something else with philosophy. And then I did philosophy, and I went to San Francisco State University.
Okay.
I was 1 year away from graduating. However, it was so much philosophy that I was like, nothing really matters.
Okay, it's like one of those where you're like deep in the sauce. You're just like, what even is? What is it to what? Okay, I see what you...
So I dropped out.
Real.
Yes, I dropped out. I came back to Mobile, and I was so aimless. I didn't have anything. My mom was pissed, and it was like a year or two that passed by, and then I got back into art, but like it was nothing serious. It was just like, I don't know what to do, so I'm just gonna do a watercolor of like a parrot. And then after that, at like 22, I moved to Los Angeles. Again, aimless, no plan. And I decided to enroll into City College.
Okay.
I thought I was going to major in early childhood development. I thought
Okay.
I was going to be a teacher. But I took an art class and I was like, wait, like, this is it. So,
This is a vibe.
Exactly. So from 17 to 22, I didn't make art, but at 22, I decided to commit to it. And I'm 32 now, so it's been 10 years.
Slay.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's been the whole sort of like back and forth of weaving in and
Yes.
out.
And this time, when I was 22, I had like one teacher tell me I didn't have what it took to make it in the art. But I was like, you know what? I already have dealt with some of y'all naysayers, so I'm gonna just keep doing it. I don't give a fuck.
Right.
Sorry.
Screw all those haters. No, they really are like, it's so common.
Yeah.
Very common. Which I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I mean, like, yeah.
It's okay. Because now when people give me like negative feedback, I'm so used to it that it doesn't affect me anymore. And also the thing is that I grew up being the youngest of 4 siblings. And so growing up, I didn't really have like a voice or a say in stuff. And so retrieving to my art was the only safe place where I was completely in control.
Okay.
Like where I could design my own world. I'm not like, listening to people telling me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're the youngest of 4.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. So then, because usually when you hear like somebody being like the youngest, they're like the baby and like they get everything, but it like.
Yeah, no, it was chaotic. We grew up with a dad that was like mentally ill, and so my mom was basically like a single mom in a way, and so
Got it.
there was just so much chaos that like I just learned to give the least amount of trouble. Yeah.
I feel you on
Yeah.
that. Yeah. No, I was. Yeah. I'm like, I know exactly what that is to just be like, you know what? You're going through a lot, Mom. I'm gonna just shut up and be over here.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And growing up, like I just needed paper and pencil to entertain myself. So I didn't really have to like beg my mom for a lot of toys. But I did play with Barbies. So I had some.
Gotta have at least one little doll in there. I was never allowed to play with Barbies, so now as an adult, I'm like, I love them.
Yeah, I still have like a Shakira Barbie, like in the box, 2 of them. And I have a Pocahontas Barbie and a Little Mermaid Barbie in the box.
Wow.
My prized possessions.
That's iconic. Oh, yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
The Shakira one would be so tempting to pull out.
Well, the Shakira one is when she was singing that song, Whenever, Whenever, and she had like blonde hair. So I'm so glad I snatched that Barbie.
Okay. I love that. Have any of these dolls ever made it into your work or no?
Not yet, but I have been eyeing them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So going back to, I guess, like college, did you graduate from college with art?
Yeah, so I
Okay.
transferred to Cal State LA. I studied art there. And I feel like my education and my learning is never finished. After graduating from Cal State LA, I knew there's so much more that I wasn't taught and that I had to like pursue by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot that I think school can teach you, but then you have to sort of learn how to apply that to life afterwards as well. And just sort of different things that they just don't teach you.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
especially Cal State LA. Like, it was affordable, and that's like the type of education I got.
I promise you, where I went to was also not that much greater.
Okay.
But I'm trying really hard not to badmouth that place.
Yeah.
But anywho, okay, so then you graduate from there, and then you are living in LA, and then you move back out here. I'm curious, sort of like, was there a calling for you, or was it just like you just had to come out here? Like, what was sort of the path for that?
So it was like during the pandemic, I was
Okay.
having a really hard time financially. I couldn't find a job. And my ex at the time was not supportive. But that's a whole nother thing. And so I decided to move back to my parents' house because I was like, you know what? If I'm going to spend so much time trying to pay like the rent and all this stuff, like I'm not going to have time to paint.
Right.
And so luckily at my parents, like, I do contribute to bills, but it's nothing like living on your own.
Right.
And so I'm going to be straightforward about it by saying that helps my art career so much, especially at a time when like my art is not necessarily making money. Like the commissions that I would do would be like $800 to $1,000, and it's really nothing compared to how much time I spent
Right.
on the commissions. Yeah, so I had to move back to my parents' house just for a peace of mind, and I love it because I was in LA struggling financially for 10 years, and that's like wear and tear on my psyche.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it really is. And I think that's so real for a lot of folks to just like, if you have the opportunity and ability to move back into your folks to do something like that does save a lot. Especially, I don't know, for me, I do enjoy, I don't know what you think, but like sometimes like making work without sort of the pressure for it to sell.
Yes.
I don't know if you have, since moving back into your parents, if that's been anything that you've sort of thought about, like prior to that, like maybe you had to make sure that you hit a certain amount of commissions or a certain amount of whatever, but like that weight is lifted off.
Exactly. I was taking on a lot of commissions. And the thing is, like, when I would give a good price, like, those customers, those clients were the ones.
The most annoying about every little
Yes.
detail. Like, actually,
Yes.
can you do this? And it's like, girl, I gave you the biggest discount of everybody. You, of everyone, should be the most quiet.
Exactly. So, 2022, I stopped taking commissions.
Okay.
And I just been doing whatever I want, listening to my voice. Because when you do commissions, at least for me, every brushstroke, I'm stressed. I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, I hope they like it. Like me wanting to please the client, it, like, is so stressful. I love just painting for myself, just pleasing myself. And if for some reason someone wants to buy it, then okay, well, here's the price. Take it or leave it, but I'm not going to lower the price.
Yeah.
Because
Knowing
I'm
your
not
worth.
desperate for money. Because I live at home. Thank you, Mom.
Shout out, mom and dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really important thing. And I think that sometimes people, especially artists, might feel a little bit discouraged or something because they might feel like, oh, like a bit of a shame or a bit like whatever. But I'm like, guys, if you're able to do it, just do it. What the hell?
Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise, we don't produce our best work when we're stressed. Like, it's just like a rat race. And I was like developing health issues. Like, the last year I lived in LA, I had sleep apnea.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then I moved back home and it went away magically.
Wow. Stress.
You know? Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you're so real for that. Yeah, I'm like 100%. I think that getting sort of different things like this and just sort of taking care of yourself, and because I think that sometimes there's sort of that idea of a notion of like an artist has to be an XYZ, but it's like, no, you can do all different things and still be an artist. And I love that you're like, this is my prize, this is what it is. If you want to get it, if not, I'm not tripping.
Exactly.
This is what it is, you know?
Yeah, and it was really wonderful moving back home. Everything was different. Well, first of all, I was like, whoa, there's so many warehouses. Like, I was dumbfounded because I haven't been.
Because it's been 10 years.
Yeah, and I barely went back to Moreno Valley, you know? And that was kind of disappointing. But one good thing was I was able to get a membership at Eastside Art House. Shout out to Juan Navarro.
Shout out Eastside.
Yeah, and Eastside Art House is a wonderful place to meet people. And so I met a lot of great people there, and it helped me transition smoothly to Moreno Valley.
Okay.
And like, thanks to Juan, I got to meet people from like the Riverside Art Museum and from the Cheech and like you, because we met at Eastside Art House.
You're both members there.
Exactly. So had Eastside Art House not been present, like I probably would have felt like way more lonely like the first year that I moved back. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that having sort of that community to like transition you back into the art realm, especially sort of in the IE where like in LA, like there's art almost everywhere. Like no matter where you go, there's going to be artists there. But like here, it's a little bit more scattered throughout, a little more sparse. So having sort of like a little community like that can for sure be helpful.
Exactly. And especially after the pandemic, like 2020, 2021, I worked by myself in the studio and it was so lonely. And so, you know, going to 2022, working alongside other people and like talking to people, it's almost like I had forgotten how to socialize. And
Yeah.
and well, I mean, every day I forget. No, I'm just kidding. But it was a good time there.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you came back, How was that? Because I'm like, were your parents always sort of like supportive of you in the arts, or sort of was it a transition, like you going out and then coming back? If you're comfortable sharing.
Let's see. My mom always wanted me to be a teacher.
Okay.
And so, and then I have a sister that's a lawyer, and my mom would be like, "Oh, why don't you get a job like your sister? Like, why don't you become a lawyer?" But I already know where my mom is coming from. Like, we grew up very, very below the poverty line. And so my mom didn't want my adulthood to just be a continuation of that. And so that's why she would be like, okay, well, what else are you going to do? But I would say once I got like my teaching job at the Getty Museum, and she was like, oh, okay, like you could do something in the arts. And like little by little, like within the past few years, she kind of sees how it's paying off. But yeah, like she wasn't that encouraging. And my dad is just like, oh, so what's your next painting? But my dad is not too involved, like just to be straight up. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay. I got,
It'd be like that.
you know, like families aren't perfect. And I think that's why in my art, like the first 8, 9 years, I did a lot of bright colors kind of to work with color therapy. I did a lot of pink to help like my nervous system, and now I feel like I have healed from my childhood, and that's why now I feel like my art is going to take a different direction where I'm incorporating more grays, more neutrals, more browns now. Because if you see my body of work, it's like a bunch of colors, pink, purple, green, like give me everything you got. And that was just me trying to heal myself by staring at these colors and working with these colors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then okay, you were saying that. Okay,
So
yeah.
my mom
Your mom
didn't really want me to do
and your dad's
art.
completely just like out. Okay.
Yeah, my dad's like mentally checked out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has it changed since coming back and seeing sort of like now that they've sort of seen you sort of do a lot more? Has that changed or not really?
Well, I would say my mom has been seeing me do a lot more with my art stuff, and she's been seeing me get like more gigs and whatnot.
Okay.
But now she's not worrying about me because I work for my sister now. I help her help people get their legal status.
Okay.
So I do a lot of like paralegal work.
Wow.
And yeah,
She's a lawyer.
she's an immigration
She's
lawyer.
a lawyer.
And so she pays me a living wage.
Slay.
Right, because a lot of times like the jobs that I had were like minimum wage. That's why I spent like 10 years just like worrying about money.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now that my mom sees I'm doing something in like the legal world in conjunction with like my art stuff, she's like, okay, like she's like less worried about me now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I feel like sometimes, a lot of times, parents, at least in mine, I've been realizing more and more that like it's not that they didn't want me to do art. They were just more worried, like, will you be okay?
Exactly, financially, especially because we're first generation.
Right.
And so my mom like struggled so much to raise all of us
Right.
on her, her $8 an hour job.
Which is crazy.
Insane.
Insane to think about.
Yeah, I didn't know how poor we were until I had to fill out FAFSA. And I was like,
God.
wait,
Yeah.
we make how much? Like,
right, we're barely above the line.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know. Happy to fill out that FAFSA form. Also by yourself.
Right.
Because being like, hey, can I have this? And like, I literally got to the point where I was like, just give me the paperwork and I'll do it.
Yeah. Luckily, one of my sisters, she would help me. But one of my other sisters was like, well, I had no help. So
Sucks
you figure it out
you.
too.
Right,
Exactly.
right.
Exactly. So there's different personalities within the family structure.
I'm curious is anyone else in your family artistic, or is it just you?
It's just me.
Okay.
However, I do have cousins on both sides of the family that are into art. I know that, so I really don't know too much about my dad's side of the family. I know very little, but I do know that he had an uncle who would help conserve the paintings in las basilicas, in
wow.
the churches.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I had another uncle that like didn't have arms, and he would paint with his feet or his mouth.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay. So you have been sort of surrounded by sort of different art, even though it might have not been your immediate family, but your surroundings.
well, I never met them.
Oh.
So these are
Okay.
just rumors.
Allegedly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Allegedly. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I really didn't have too many experiences with my extended family because we moved from Mexico. Well, I was born like 2 months after my family moved.
Okay.
But the thing is, like, we didn't really have money to go back and
Right.
whatnot. So I didn't really grow up with like too many cousins or uncles or grandparents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's just kind of been.
Immediate family, and then
Okay.
I think, and we have like I have a one tia here, my mom's sister, and so that was pretty much like the most family that I got to interact with growing up.
Okay.
Yeah, which is why with my paintings, I painted like the first thing I did once I got back into painting was paint my siblings, my parents, because
Yeah.
I really wanted to preserve our family history. So with oral history, it usually disintegrates between like 3 generations.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but with my family, our oral history, like it was just wiped out with 1 generation when my family moved over here.
Right.
Yeah, so I like don't know too much.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting because, yeah, I think that a lot of your work does, I think a lot, when I think of your work, it's very family centered.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that sort of like familial love and wanting to like almost like hold on to it for as much as you can. And it's done in such a like love and tender way, but also like exploring like some of the like different nuances of it. And has that always been something that sort of fascinated you, like wanting to paint family things as opposed to maybe wanting to paint landscapes or wanting to paint, I don't know, anything else?
Yeah, so I think because I grew up without really knowing too much about my extended family, I was like, well, let me make an archive, a visual archive of my immediate family so that if any of us have any offsprings, like they
Okay.
could look at the paintings and be like, oh, this is like such and such.
Okay.
And so I've been in that era, but then I shifted to more like a global history. So
Okay.
first I captured family history and then global history.
And like branched out.
Yeah, which is why like once COVID hit, I was like, oh man, I gotta make a bunch of paintings about this. And that was like primarily like my body of work during 2022. I was just painting a lot of stuff about COVID because I'm like, dude, in 100 or 500 years.
Oh, that's right, because you did the masks one.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, so I wanted to be like people could look at it and be like, oh, this is what happened during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And aside from that, I did a body of work that intertwines the astrology of pandemics with like the COVID that was happening with us. So I had that down, and then now I'm just entering a new era with my paintings.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know where I'm going, but I just know that my color palette is changing and I'm incorporating more esoteric symbols, more of the things that I'm interested in, like astrology and astronomy. Yeah.
Okay. I would love astronomy, and I would love to dive deeper into that. One, what is the difference between astronomy and astrology? Because I guess I never.
Okay.
Well, I guess astronomy is the study of the actual stars, and
Yeah, so-
astrology is the zodiac.
Back in the day, like years, like 500 years ago or even like longer, like they were intertwined. Like astrologers had to know astronomy to understand why astrology works.
Okay.
And so pretty much when astrology began, it first began so that it could tell people when to plant certain seeds, when to harvest.
Right. Like
It
that was their calendar.
It was agricultural.
Okay.
And then after that, people would just like write down like this happened when Jupiter was conjunct Saturn or whatnot. And so then astrology to me, the way I understand it, is looking out for the patterns.
Right.
Patterns of happenings when like during the wherever the moon is at and whatnot,
Right.
the eclipses. And astronomy now, especially like as of recently, like the last 100 years, it took a step away from astrology and it's more like scientific based.
Right.
It's just like, okay, here's the Milky Way.
This is just looking at this is what it is.
Yeah,
And-
exactly. It's not really like concerned about like human happenings or patterns in human history.
Interesting. Yeah, because that's something that I've always thought about. That I'm like, when people say like astronomy is not real or whatever, I'm like, do you guys not know that that's how they knew when to like plant certain things or when to look out for stuff like this.
Yeah, so my favorite thing to talk about is when
Please.
Christianity and astrology were intertwined. If everyone goes and Googles the Limburg brothers, they made a little calendar that like would show like, okay, Aquarius season, everyone does like this feast or like does this. For Pisces, you do this. It was an almanac of like how to treat the land and what prayers to say during what seasons.
Okay.
And so the body of work I did in 2022, I combined some of the symbols that the Limburg brothers used in those calendars into my paintings.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, because a lot of times people will like demonize astrology, especially like I grew up very Catholic, and so my mom cannot believe it that I'm into astrology.
Well.
And so I like to just point out, like, hey, at one point, religion and astrology were intertwined.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Like, you guys don't think, like, they literally found, and even in the story of, like, Jesus, like, they found Jesus because they were looking at the stars.
Yeah, exactly. They were looking for the stars.
Yeah, like, it's always been a thing. And I think it's so interesting the way you incorporate astrology and astronomy into a lot of your work and also your day-to-day practice. Like, you were literally like telling me like when you wanted to come to visit today because you were like looking at the stars and being like, oh, this day would be a good day, this is that day. How did you get sort of into that, and sort of how has that impacted the way you've seen you producing work?
So I would say, like, I began learning about astrology without understanding anything of it.
Okay.
2018 and 2019, it was like all a big blur, but I would still just like keep listening to it. But I didn't truly understand it until 2020 hit.
Okay.
I got unemployment. That was like my dream come true, to get unemployment, because then I got to focus on painting.
Okay.
Without
Real.
being financially stressed.
Yeah.
And so when I was working on paintings, I was like sick of just listening to a bunch of music. So I was like, let me just put on these like astrology classes that I bought for myself.
Okay.
And so I took a lot of courses. I heard them while I was painting, and then 2020 and onward, it solidified my understanding of astrology.
Okay.
And
like
it
clicked.
Yes. And the thing is that like I would notice, like growing up, I would notice that I had more hardships than like my friends. And I'm like, dude, like why do I have so many roadblocks? Like why don't things just like line up easy for me, like they do for my friends? And learning about my birth chart, learning about my placements, like it was so validating. Like I would just try my best to do things, and like it wasn't easy.
Right.
And so, and also like really messed up things have happened to me, especially throughout my 20s. And I like just held such a big grudge to like certain people. And then once I learned astrology, I looked back to like the days that like they, did me wrong. And I was like, oh, like I was having really tough transits. And that allowed me to let go.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was just really validating.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to hear, because I know that some folks might think that they're like, oh, some people think that it's either fake. They're like, that's fake. Or I've also heard the argument that they're like, well, they don't like looking at it because then it almost feels like there's no...
like free will.
Like no free will,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But to hear you say that it's almost like validating, I don't know. To me, I just think of it more of like, it's like looking at the weather patterns and being like, why was I wet? And it's like, well, girl, it was raining.
Yes. Yes.
And so that's how I sort of think of the astrology. So when you're saying like the validating, you're probably like, why was I like so thirsty for all these years? And it's like, girl, you were in a drought.
Yeah.
Like, no shit, it was so hard because you were in a drought.
Exactly. Yeah. I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
Wait. What did you ask? Hold on.
Oh, like, how has it impacted into your work? Or what do you mean? Or about the free will?
Okay, so there is free will, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is that there's free will, but you could have some years where things are just gonna go easier, and then you have other years where things are gonna go like harder.
Yeah.
And it's all like how you respond. Like free will is always there.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like now, like my friends, they let me do like predictions for them.
She's crazy. I was honestly a little bit afraid coming in today because I was like, I'm like, I don't want her to look at me and be like, how's your left knee doing? Your Venus is entering your conjunction your Mars, and I don't know, I would just make sure where you step next week.
Yeah.
Like, she's not crazy.
Yeah, I had to tell my dad. I was like, hey, like the next year you have to really take care of your body. You could be prone to like accidents. And then 2 weeks later, he hurt his finger. And he was like, man, I thought about you, I thought about what you told me.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And
Yeah.
like, I think, yeah.
But I love it because like when I have hard times, I'm just like, this is just momentarily, and I
Yeah.
know next year is going to be better. And this is just my time to just surrender to all the challenges that are upon me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like also just seeing like preparing yourself, like if you know, oh, this is going to be a challenging time, like preparing. Like I remember somebody was telling me that they were looking at their chart and they were like, I really want XYZ to happen, but the stars are saying it's not going to happen. Like I just have to sit here. And because of that, it made it easier for them to be like, this is not the year that's going to happen. And I have to
Yeah.
like really sit with myself this year.
Exactly. Exactly. And a lot of times people will think like astrology is fake because like in the 1900s, like in the beginning of those years, astrology like was put into newspaper, but people who didn't know about astrology were writing the horoscopes.
No way.
And they were writing them for your sun sign. And up until that period of time, people listened to the horoscopes with the rising. And so the newspaper is like, oh, this is your sun sign. Read it with your sun sign. And then that combined with people who really weren't astrologers.
Right.
Like, of course, it's going to leave a bad taste in people's mouth. It just sounds like another word for bullshit.
Yeah. You want to BS.
You BS. There you go. I don't want to cuss. Yeah, so I get it when people don't believe in it, and I respect when people don't believe in it. But I love my friends that don't believe in it because I get to make predictions for them, and it works. And I'm just like, okay.
I told you.
Yeah.
What did I say?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, it's really crazy. How have you used that in terms of like making work? Like, do you sometimes plan like, oh, today's not a good day to me, or do you
So-
think like, yeah,
So I'll plan stuff out, like much like Remedios Varos, she would start paintings on days that she would select because of astrology.
okay,
Yeah,
who's
and
that?
Remedios Varos.
Okay.
She was a Spaniard artist who moved to Mexico.
Okay.
She painted in surrealism.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I very much follow that. And I mean, not all the time, but when I have the mental space to be like, all right, let's look at the ephemeris, let's plan something out, you know, when I have the luxury of time
Right.
to do that. Yeah.
Have you found that to be actually like helpful for those days, or like this is a lot easier than other days?
You know, every painting is hard.
Okay.
Like, it's never easy. It's time consuming. I'm not a quick painter. Everything you see takes so long for me to
Yeah.
achieve. And so, yeah, like, it just doesn't get easier, but I just still like to elect days and times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of painting, I think it's now time to talk about your painting
Yes.
at the Cheech on the Revolutions of Heavenly Spheres 2024 by Stephanie Godoy. I'm going to read the little your statement. Okay. On the Revolutions of Heavenly Spheres transcends historical boundaries as it combines cultural, religious, and esoteric symbols to suggest a dawn of a new era, one that departs from colonial and patriarchal structures and is rooted within existing alongside the living and breathing earth and cosmos. I explore the idea of the past by uniting imagery used by my Mexican ancestors and the experience my first degree relatives had while adapting from traditional Mexican ways to the U.S. customs. I placed my siblings in one of Saturn's moons, Titan, which resembles early Earth. It serves as a metaphor for them landing in a different world, a world where they begin the process of assimilation. They left behind their hometown in which daily life centered around the Basilica of San Juan de los Lagos, a sacred site with an extensive history in the region where devotees from local and distant lands performed annual pilgrimages. My siblings are depicted entering a new life where they were required to pick up from the local language, English, which gave them new responsibilities, one of them being to become our parents' translators. On the right side of the painting is a dragonfly. I honor the journey that 6 species of dragonflies take in North America as they migrate between Mexico and the U.S. In 2028, NASA will send a rotocraft named Dragonfly to explore Saturn's moon, Titan. The Dragonfly's ability to travel large distances to overcome obstacles and its ability to maneuver through time and space made it the perfect candidate for the craft to be named and modeled after. In some Mesoamerican cultures, dragonflies represent transformation and creativity. These insects emerge from ponds and lakes in Mexico during the spring to migrate about 450 miles to the U.S. to lay their eggs and die. The second generation reaches maturity and heads back to Mexico, completing a cycle only to repeat it in time and time again. Wow.
That's a mouthful.
I was saying, wow, like there's so much like research into this, and I love hearing all of the different nuances and all of the different like there are levels to this. You have your personal life, you also have the history of the Mesoamericans in there, you have the history of your family's region, you have NASA and the moon and Saturn, and you also have these dragonflies. Like that's a quite like a large amount of things that you managed to put all together beautifully into one piece. So I'm like, please tell me more.
It's insane, and that's how my mind is always working. I'm always thinking about like 15 things at once and trying to see how like things connect.
Right.
Sometimes it's awesome, other times it's not. Other times just like, okay, can we just not think for a second?
Right.
But yeah, so that image that I painted of my siblings is a picture that was taken of them right when we moved to the United States.
Okay.
And I say we because I was like 8 months in my mom's womb.
Okay, so you were not pregnant. You were not born yet.
Yeah.
You were in the belly.
Yeah, exactly. So like they came like in November and I was born in January.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I actually brought the picture.
I'm like,
So this is the picture. Maybe we'll get like a close up of it.
I'll put an overlay, but I would love to see the reference.
So it's my siblings.
This is so cute.
Dressed in like corporate like attire. And it kind of represents to me how we had to grow up very quickly. Like we had to become our parents' translators. Like I think that's like when I first felt anxiety, like in the Moreno Valley Mall at the Robinson's May, trying to translate things for my mom about concepts I had no idea about.
Right.
I was like 4 years old, like what? And I just felt so much anxiety because I knew that I just felt like the weight of the world on me. Like I was the translator.
Yeah.
And so it's rough. It's rough having like parents that don't know the language and that rely on you to make sense of the world.
Yeah, from a young age, having to like explain like legal documents to your parents.
Exactly.
Like, things come in the mail and they're like, what does this say? And it's like,
I don't know.
Bank is asking, they're going to take away the house. And you're like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
You don't even know what you're saying, but you have to say it.
I remember in first grade, everyone like, so kindergarten, I took a Spanish class, and then first grade, I was in an English class, and my teacher asked me, oh, so when's your birthday? And I was like, oh my God. And I didn't know, and I asked my mom, and she was like, enero. And I was like, okay, but like, what's enero in English? She's like, I don't know. And the whole weekend I stressed.
Aww.
Yeah. And on Monday I was like, oh my God, what am I going to tell the teacher? Because the teacher didn't know Spanish. But the teacher just like forgot and like didn't even ask me. But it was just like moments like that I would just feel like anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I think that speaks to a lot of fresh generation folks, a lot of BIPOC communities of having to grow up quickly and like not be able to sometimes enjoy your youth and enjoy being a kid because you have to be the one doing stuff for your folks. You know?
Exactly. And then that's why I knew that my mom was always financially stressing because I had to communicate with people that she had to pay bills to.
Right.
Like, and that's why like, yeah, I just knew too much. And all my siblings did. And that's why I really wanted to paint that because it's like we feel alien in this new, country. And it's up to us to like help push our parents forward because they just didn't know English yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're exploring new world, quite literally.
Yes, exactly. And the reason why I put my siblings like with Saturn in the background is because Saturn takes 27 years to orbit around the sun.
Yes.
And I feel like that's how long it takes to fully assimilate and put your roots down in a new
Okay.
country. Like to get through learning the language, education, finding a job.
Yeah.
You don't have no resources or networks. Like your parents' buddy can't give you your first job or internship, you know? And the thing, and also like growing up, I did a lot of art, but I never thought I'd be an artist because I didn't know a single artist. And we cannot be what we cannot see.
Yeah.
Our imagination is like as much as like we could think about, as much as we could see. And then once you get better, then you can imagine more.
Right.
But that's why growing up, I was like, I'm not going to be an artist. Yeah. And then aside from that, like the Saturn is in the background. My siblings are on Titan, which is a planet that resembles early Earth, meaning the first 1 billion years of Earth.
Wow.
And so it's kind of just like figuring out and trying to navigate things.
It's all new.
Exactly. And then in the rings of Saturn, this is like more hidden, but on the top part, I put a graphite drawing of the Mixton War. The Mixton War was a war in Mexico. Like people from Zacatecas, Jalisco, Aguascalientes, Guanajuato, they teamed up to fight against the Spaniards. But the Spaniards already had the Aztecs and another indigenous group as allies.
Oh.
And so the thing is that within that drawing, the rings of Saturn covers some of it and exposes some of it. And that kind of just is a metaphor for how we understand our history. Like, only parts of our history peek through.
Yeah.
And other parts are hidden.
Oh.
So that's why it's like some awkward lines up there.
Because that was something that, when I saw, I thought that was such an interesting sort of, what's it called? Execution of the idea. And I was wondering, like, because that seemed very deliberate, because everything else is rendered so beautifully. Yeah. And then you have these sort of like graphite drawings. Some of them are hidden. And then like the first thought is obviously like, did you not have enough time to like finish this? But I'm like, no, Stephanie's like, you are somebody who has like a lot of intention. I mean, a lot of the artists in there, but you also have like a lot of just like intention about everything. So I've been like dying to ask, but I didn't want to ask until the podcast because I was like, I want to know and I want everyone else to hear to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. And then at the bottom of the painting, there's birth charts. There's 4 birth charts of the 4 people that helped us come to the United States.
Oh, so it's not your siblings' birth charts.
No.
Okay.
It's of 4 grown men.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And if it wasn't for them, we would still be in Mexico.
Okay.
So they changed our entire life.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's like my way of honoring them without speaking too much about it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
And, I don't want to speak too much about it because it's something very private. Yeah. And I figured that using astrology to speak about it in like a code was perfect because not everyone understands astrology.
Right.
And like not everyone's going to understand what happened. Yeah.
But you do.
Oh, yeah.
To the people who mattered, it does.
Yes. Yes.
I think that's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's also such a sweet thing to like also want to honor not only your siblings for doing that, but also like everyone else who helped you even get there, which I think is something that is sometimes overlooked.
Exactly. Every person like just shapes your life. Right?
Yeah.
They either add something or subtract something. And that's why like I just wanted to make this painting, just like have everything in there.
Yeah.
And aside from that, in 2019, I actually tried to paint that same picture.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
It was exhibited at Plaza de la Raza.
Okay.
I didn't finish it. I didn't like it. It's up in my living room, and I'm always just like, oh God, like it's so bad.
Was it one of those pieces? Because I have that where like I have these where I'm like, this was such a good idea, but I did not execute it, and like it haunts you until you get it done right.
Yeah, the thing is, I didn't have that much time because like I already had a trip to Mexico City and Oaxaca planned, and then they offered me to like exhibit there, and I was like, oh my God, well I'm gonna just do the best I can with the time I have. I actually have like a picture of it. Let me show you.
Please, I would love to see because that is, yeah, such a like artist thing where you do something and you're like, I have to just get it out right now.
Yes, exactly. Like, so this is it.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It still looks really good. I don't know what you're gonna have to send me this.
Yeah, it's like that yellow green
Oh, she's
background.
holding also
La Virgen de
La
San
Virgen.
Juan.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So then this composition has. Tell me about more about because you have those.
Okay. So I knew I wanted to redo this one. I wanted to
Okay.
be satisfied with it.
Okay.
And even then, I'm still not satisfied with it. But aside from that, this is how I prepped. So
Okay.
I always make different color studies, different compositional studies, just to work things through. And then I'll just ask the opinion of some people,
Okay.
like to see like what
What
you
they
know.
like.
Yeah. And so that's how it came about.
These are beautiful.
Yeah, and so
little...
what it is, it's different photographs of Saturn, and so
Okay. Oh, like different positions
yeah,
of
like
it.
this is just the ring, and then this is the one obviously I picked. But yeah, so I wanted to just try different compositions with Saturn.
I like how in here when you showcase them and they're just like a triangle.
Yeah, actually, one of my mentors was like, "Why don't you just stick with the triangle? It looks mysterious."
It definitely is, yeah. A little
Yeah.
like, oh, what is this?
Yeah, but I wanted to paint my siblings.
No, I think the siblings is really pretty, but to
Yeah.
also see sort of like the fact that they could almost be represented, like that they form that
The
composite.
triangle. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I just go through so many things like in the process. And I like to play a lot before starting the final painting, just so I could get all of my ideas out of the way. Yeah.
That's so cool. Okay. So, and yeah, it looks like you went through a couple, like, even though you already had the pre existing one, you were still like, let me push it even further.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, with this one, how, to what extent sort of are you hoping that people understand? Like, when you, because it's such a, sometimes when it's something that's so like dense or so personal, like, how do you, yeah, like, how do you hope people to like take away from it?
So I just hope that like other first gen kids that were the translators or had to like grow up quicker, I hope they see themselves within the kids that are wearing the suit and all the corporate wear. And it's kind of just like a shout out to all those people. And aside from that, I'm not really too concerned if people fully understand it.
Okay.
Because I do think that sometimes when you're doing new things, a lot of people are not going to gravitate towards it. For example, Van Gogh only sold one painting in his lifetime. Now, if I were to do the same themes, the same symbols, same things that like is already within the realm of Chicano art, I'm just kind of like copy and pasting. And that's not really my interest. And so I know that I sound a little kooky when I'm talking about astrology, astronomy, and like all this stuff. But it's not in, like, if people understand it, great. And if people don't understand it, that's fine. Like, growing up, I think I've been used to people thinking I'm a little weird or kind of like
alienating, perhaps.
Yeah, and then I'm Aquarius sun. And when I learned about the like the archetype of Aquarius, I was like, oh, perfect. Like I was never like the popular kid or center of attention, like, or the person, like I was always like an outsider.
Okay.
And so I feel like that continues with my art as I combine like cultural symbols with esoteric symbols. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And if I was doing it for the approval of others, I would drive myself crazy.
Right.
Like, for example, one of my sisters was like, I like your first painting better. And, like, she didn't like the second painting.
Really?
Yeah. And she was not shy about letting other people know and letting me know. Yeah. And it's like, it's okay. I'm already used to not being the crowd pleaser.
Okay.
And also, like, when I spend a bunch of money on my supplies and I spend a lot of time on my art, like, I'm not necessarily looking for validation.
Right. This is for me.
Exactly. Like when I was little, it's the only place where I have complete control.
Yeah. This
Yeah.
is my world. This is what I'm creating.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's one of the beauties of art is, especially when you make it sort of more for yourself. You're just like, I, I mean, like sometimes it is nice to hear other people's opinions, but at the end of the day, I'm making this. This is for me.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
and I think like people just like what they're exposed to a lot. Like there's a lot of like motifs that are thrown around so much, and that's fine. But I'm not gonna copy and paste.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's something that for me I find very interesting with your work is that you might still use some symbols that might be sort of in the general lexicon and that people will use, but the way you use it, you're one of the few people I've seen who've done one really extensive research from my
Oh,
understanding. Like
yeah.
you do a lot of research into a lot of these things and like connect them not only like, oh, this of the story, but like literally like being like, oh, this story is about I don't know war, and my piece is talking about war, but like war and also the stars,
Yeah.
and like the timing, like there's like so many more like little nuanced connections that I find so fascinating, and I think it's also interesting the way that yeah, just like you dive deep into these topics, but like sort of have it in a way that's like more nuance and just a little more mindful as well of like
Yeah.
why you're using it.
Yeah, I mean, I've always like growing up, I was always like in gate or honors classes. I started college very early. I did philosophy. My mind has always been super active.
Okay.
But like now in the work that's to come, I am going to try to like calm down my active mind
Okay.
and kind of just receive things that catch my interest by
Okay.
just receiving it. So now, like, I'm gonna stop overthinking
Okay.
if it's possible. That's what I'm going for. I've been working with different artists, like assisting them,
Okay.
and that has helped,
Like
kind
see
of
their practice.
yeah, see their practice and be like, you know what, I could try something new too. Because oftentimes the research that I do will exhaust me.
Yeah. You can dive deeper and deeper.
There's no
There's
end.
no end. Yeah.
And so now I'm just like, you know what? Maybe I should take that energy and just produce more work and like not really question too much why I'm drawn to these things.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna try that. We'll
Okay.
see. We'll see if I could just
Like be a little more intuitive with it, perhaps.
yes,
Okay.
and not have to justify to myself why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Because that's what I spend a lot of energy doing is trying to justify like what I'm doing, why is it culturally significant, and I think like in art school we would have art critiques.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, and I think that kind of like traumatized me because I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I need an answer for every single question, and then that's why now I overcompensate by
Yeah.
doing like 2 months of research before I started painting, and
That-
then I'm tired.
Yeah. Girl, I'm in the exact same boat. I know exactly like that's
Yeah.
one of the most stressful things of like having to sort of yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I'm trying to take it like easier. I'm trying to just be like, my worth doesn't like rely on all the things I know.
Yeah.
Like I could just be and like give myself the space and the peace to just be without justifying.
No,
Yeah.
100%. I think though that like yeah, you can just get in your head, you can start thinking about everything and trying to justify it. I know that for myself, like that has been one of the things that I've been struggling a lot with. And I've been trying to sort of not justify it, but kind of make it a little more positive, being like, okay, like that is stressful, but now because I've gone through all of that, now I can go back into being more intuitive, but still having secure in myself.
Yes, exactly. I think as like first gens, we're just used to doing so much. We're used to working so much to earn minimum wage.
And to
And yeah, like in all, and that
prove
translates
yourself.
exactly. Like we have to overcompensate.
yeah.
Meanwhile, other artists are just chilling. Like, oh, I painted a concha. I don't know why, but I'll see why later. And they're like showing at like blue chip galleries.
Right. Like
And I'm like, wait a minute, you didn't have to answer these questions before you got to the gallery?
yeah, that is true. Like there is just some folks who will just be like, and then you'll just ask them like, I don't know, I just thought he was cool, but like everyone else almost like makes the connections for them.
Exactly.
And Yeah, I will say that similarly, I often felt, especially in art school, like I was not given that grace. People were much more, I don't know, and I don't know why. Why is it like that with us that like we have to sort of justify everything we do?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's this book called like the Latinx Art Market,
Ooh.
by Arlene. I don't know her last name, but it kind of talks about how people of color, like in the art world, are expected to paint about their culture or their traumas.
And
Meanwhile, people that are not like minorities can just paint about whatever they want. Like it doesn't have to be about their culture.
right, that's why they can explore things like shapes, colors, abstract things, but like we have to sort of bring it back to something.
Yeah. So everyone wants to hear about our traumas in the art world.
Yeah, it's
But and that's why I'm like, I'm just gonna shift it. Like it's not like I'm showing at like too many galleries already. So it's like what difference is it gonna make if I, shift my direction? Yeah.
yeah, I know it can be a little tricky to try to balance that because you also at the same time want to like obviously represent and sort of do that and make it accessible, but it's also like it's exhausting.
Yeah, I think to do it every single time, every single painting is exhausting.
Yeah. And I think that is good. So then moving forward then you're hoping to do a lot more intuitive, just like or how so?
Yeah, like just well, first of all, like changing my color palette
Okay.
and just being more intuitive with what I want to paint. And the answers haven't arrived to me yet.
Okay.
But I'm just in a season where I'm just gathering symbols that interest me, like, just going more down the esoteric route. Like, I love that. I could stay in there forever. And yeah, like right now I'm actually drafting up some drawings to make paintings about light pollution
Ooh.
because Gen Z is like the first generation to grow up without like seeing the Milky Way or like without seeing like much of the stars because we have so much light pollution in cities now and it messes with our melatonin first of all and
Yeah.
it also messes with like the migration of birds or like sea turtles like they all rely on the moon and the stars to go a certain direction and now with these like lights at night it messes with them and the LED lights terrible for us and we just have shifted so much like we don't even realize that we see different stars, different constellations in the summer as opposed to the winter.
Yeah.
During the summer, in North America, we see more stars because we're looking at the center of our Milky Way.
Okay.
And then during the winter, we see less stars because we're actually looking outside to like other galaxies.
Okay.
And so, that inspires feelings of change. And I think, and different, and like inspires we always have seasons in our life. And I think it's important for people to keep that in mind because it's like when you don't have a season where you didn't perform as well or like maybe you went down a path that you're not proud of, like change is always possible because if there's one thing in the world that's true, it's change.
Yeah.
And so we don't even see that with the stars anymore. Like we're losing a lot of myths that like, before were passed down generation to generation. And we can't even see my favorite star clusters, the Pleiades. And so many different cultures have different stories about the Pleiades. A lot of Mesoamerican shamans worked with the Pleiades. And these are all like information that we don't really know about.
Yeah.
And so I think now like my artwork is going to go more towards that and to like kind of like and here I am thinking a lot again. And to like educating people what kind of lights are the best for the nighttime. Like lights that have like covers that light and that are light censored. So we're not wasting energy and whatnot. Yeah.
It's so interesting. I'm like, yeah, every time people say this, I'm like, guys, if it's affecting the way that the turtles are finding their way home, you don't think that's affecting us? And it's something that I didn't think about was like the stars, again, even though you might not think of it on a conscious level, but subconsciously your mind is picking up all these different changes.
Yes.
And I think that's so interesting that you're saying that because of our modern world, like you're right, we are used to a much more level of consistency.
Yes.
And I can see how that can mess you up and sort of like, if your mind is always thinking like everything always stays the same, then that's good if everything's good. But the moment things get bad, you're mind is now thinking it will always be bad, instead of knowing that, like, no, life is always constantly changing. A lot of these shifts are happening.
Exactly. Exactly. And so
Huh.
that's why I'm like, if we get rid of the stars with our light polulu, then like we're not going to have anything to like inspire us. And like the stars have inspired science, literature,
Yeah.
art. Yeah.
And yeah, literally, I mean, it's also interesting that the way you started off the podcast was talking about the Copernicus
Oh, I
and
love them.
and the stars, and like how, yeah, like that fundamental life changes the way we
Exactly.
view the world, how we view each other.
Exactly. And it's just important to remember that like what we know right now is like a fragment of truth, but like
Yeah.
science is always developing. The way we understand the world is always developing. It's always expanding. And that's why we can't say stuff like make America great again. Like
Because we
what?
can't go back to it. It's always
No.
changing. It's always evolving.
Exactly. And we shouldn't go back to anything.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
should move
like
to something better.
we're smarter. We have more
Yeah.
tech. Like let's like develop things in a positive way.
Every time somebody says, I was born in the wrong generation, I'm like, do you guys not understand how great it is? Like,
Yes.
we literally, modern medicine, for starters,
Yes.
the fact that we have access to like Tylenol,
Yeah.
life changing. But also, I'm like, if you have the privilege to be like AC, to have running water that's great, to be able to call somebody and be like, can you bring me this pizza right now? Do you not know how great that is?
Exactly. And like another thing is like we don't see everything. So we can't act like we know what is like the best from the past. And like this is like a random point, but like for me, a rainbow represents our limitations because it represents the only wavelengths that is visible to the human eye. Like there's so many more wavelengths that we can't even see.
Yeah.
And so if we don't even keep that in mind, then it's like that's how we keep ourselves like boxed in,
Yeah.
thinking that we've seen the height of human existence.
No, we've only seen a sliver
Yeah.
of the possibilities.
Yeah, exactly.
That's such a cool concept to like explore.
You see, my brain is always like,
No, personally, I love that. Even if
Yeah.
if like you have all of this thought process behind it, and even if you make something that's a little more simple, but to know that all of this is what's sort of backing up that work.
in the subconscious, you right?
Yeah.
That's what's like driving my thought, the direction of my thought, like.
And I think that is so cool. So even if you were to start making things that are like, for example, maybe it might be like gradients like a dollar and dollar or something, like just to hear that there's all of this concept behind it, that like now to like know that for me, I love when artists have a lot of intentionality.
Yeah.
I guess like I'll be biased. I do love. I mean, I also love when it's subconscious having fun. But when there is something for you to chew on, like I love when there's work that is very beautiful. It just as is. You can take it as it is. But it's also like, if you dive deeper into it, it's a gift that keeps on giving. And that's how I feel like with your work.
Oh, thank you.
You know, it's like I already loved your work when you presented it. But like to me, the one that I really love more and more that I think about it is the ring, and how you're saying
yeah.
the pieces are, because that's how I feel like a lot of my work is. That's the piece was that I was talking about, like the idea of myths being sort of recreated and you can no longer access them.
Yes.
And sort of what you're talking, like the more you try to get into and understand, it's like it's a game of telephone.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's just a rumor by now.
Yeah, at this point, it is, which is so unfortunate. But to my end, I was talking about sort of like how that's affecting, now as I think of it as a simulation, like you're sort of understanding it, but to hear your perspective, like you're still trying to honor it for what it is. I think it's such beautiful, the different ways we're exploring it. And so, yeah, when I saw your piece, I was like, I've been dying to like know what that is.
Yeah, because I'm not going to leave some awkward lines for no reason.
No, of course not. Like you are so much, I'm like, you are so, everything has
And,
like
like,
such detail.
I wasn't pleased with it, how it looked visually, but I was like, you know what? For this part, it's just like the message that matters.
I loved it. I think it sends a stronger message if it's like also like even in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
exactly.
It's like in these rings that are rotating, and it's like this is just a glimpse of it rotating. Like you can't even see this one thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And like in mythology, like Saturn governs like time and history, Chronos. And so that's why I wanted to I wanted to put some history in the rings within Saturn. That's why I placed that within Saturn.
Big brain. See, this is what I mean. Like, I love hearing more of like the different levels of this.
Yeah. And then I put the little stars, the iridescent stars, to kind of show us that wherever we're standing from, that's what we see. And as we like take steps,
It glistens differently.
Yes, we see a different perspective, a
Yeah.
different image. And that's what I think matters. Like when we're so judgmental of somebody, it's because we're standing in a certain spot. But if we just went to the right more, we would see the situation differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that you capture that beautifully, adding those little details. That was one of my favorite parts, especially on the tooth. Like the gold tooth. I was like, you see me?
Well, so the little gold tooth was like to represent like silver kid tooth energy because my brother was very chaotic growing up.
That was me. I had 9 cavities every time I would go.
Dude.
I'm not even kidding.
And then him holding like the little sugar candy. Yes. Yeah.
It was so good.
Yeah, that was like one of the decisions I made while working by myself, no interruptions, and hearing the whispers that come. Because every moment when you're creating is a decision that you have to make. And sometimes you hear the whispers that are so low, you know, and you go towards it and then you get something cute like a little silver tooth there.
It's such a wonderful moment.
Yeah.
And I love that so much.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on here and telling us more about you, your work with this. I am so glad. Now next time when I'm going to see, I'm going to have even, a more deeper understanding and appreciation for it. So thank you so much for coming out here.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to do this video. I'm so happy that the way I think is going to be out in the world for if anyone, wants to learn more about me.
Yeah.
Then they could see this video, and I'm forever grateful for that.
Yeah, well, thank you. Let them know where to find you. Put Stephanie in your show. Support up and coming, amazingly talented artist.
Yeah, so people could find me on TikTok and Instagram, Stephanie Godoy Art.
And your website?
Oh, yeah, I do have a website that's neglected. StephanieGodoy.com.
Amazing. Go check out her work. Go reach out. If you have anything, leave them down below. We'd love to start a conversation.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks
you guys,
for everyone that's watching.
Thank y'all. You can find me, Art Perry, the podcast, Red Thoughts Perry. Subscribe. And I'll catch y'all later. Ciao. Yay! Oh my God. Okay. Thank you.
That was great.
That was amazing.